does not work? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, we're suggesting here in the city of Chattanooga, it may be the manner in which this program was provided or initiated, but my understanding, dealing with people on the street, is that there's a lack of trust between government and the community. And, to some degree, people ask, well, why don't you come forth if you know about a crime, someone being killed and all of that? The perfect example, one of the examples that I would give is that this past week, a young man, a high schooler, gave some information to an SRO in his school. And as a result of that, another young man was apprehended and put in jail. Now, that was in the paper. Now, the young man who was put in jail, he's going to know it's just a few people that he spoke to at school. And then the young man who assisted, is his life going to be in jeopardy? So I'm saying there are things that the system needs to do, to protect people or their identity, when things happen.
Is your doubt, Yusuf Hakeem, that sort of against the fact that these police officers are state employees, or is your doubt against where is the problem that these are state actors that are enforcing the gang rule, or is there something else? My theory is that these young men don't like dealing with police officers, and that if there's a VRI, it needs to be through some mechanism, some group of people who don't wear guns, don't wear uniforms, are not a military organization with mace, with cuffs, with the implements of war even on their persons. Is the fact that that the VRI is comprised of police officers the problem, or is that not the problem? Is it simply a matter of tinkering with the people or the methods of that organization within the police department?
My view is that the program has been too top heavy. And what I mean by that, you have a small group of people at the top, beyond that of the chief of police, who set policy and dictate things. And as a result of that, the community feels left out, not a part of it. These young men don't have that trust with the government. So I'm saying that there needs to be more involvement by the community with the police. And I think that could make things better. But what I'm saying now is that the community is not a part of the decision-making process.
Well, can you elaborate, Yusuf Hakeem, on what you mean by involvement of the community? That is abstract. Are you talking about individual people like my listener? Are you talking about churches? Are you talking about private school operators? Are you talking about business people? Whom are you referring to?
I think you have to add all of those persons into the categories because they're all necessary. I guess I go to that old cliche that we hear, it takes a village. Everybody is going to have to be involved. And when you have when I say, again, the community, we're talking about all of those entities or persons you spoke of, particularly the churches. And there are young men who go into the community and talk with these young people. And I don't think we're utilizing what we have before us. It's sort of like, if you're at the top, I know what's best for you, and this is how we're going to do it. And I think if we were to look at VRI programs in other cities, I think the community is more involved in the process.
Well, is that something that city officers and the police department or officials can be tasked with drawing out? Should not these come sort of spontaneously from, as you say, the community? How is it that city officials on the city payroll can there's only so much they can do in drawing members of the community, such as my listener, into this effort? That seems like you're asking a lot from government workers to do.
Well, if you notice, I said, give the example that I gave. The system has a way of keeping its information that, in this case of the young man in high school, his identity was made known, to the general public. The way they do business, so to speak, they need to consider changing some of that. When I'm not talking about the police, I'm talking about those of us in government who are lawmakers and policymakers. I'm saying we need to step back in a sense and let the police and let the community be more active in that process.
What is it in the makeup of these young men who are said to be members of gangs and who are blamed with the shooting on Brainerd Road a couple of days ago that caused a 7-car pileup, the front page of the Chattanooga Times-Free Press? What is it in their character that needs appeal? What is it in the character of these young men that needs to be addressed? How are they to be approached so that they might find a way different from using their 9mm? What do you propose?
Well, I think some of what the gangs give these young men is a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of family. And we have to get more of our churches and businesses involved in that process of giving that support to these young people. You and I were talking earlier, and it's a fact that a number of these young people have the ability to be successful, law-abiding entrepreneurs. I mean, if you can run $1 million business, an illegal business, where that says that you have the tenacity, the desire, to move forward, but no one has taken that time to give him the tools to move in the other direction.
It sounds like, Yusuf Hakeem, that you're really referring to a deacon in the Christian church who knows one of these young men and who has invested time, personal connections, maybe referrals to such a person, and that's a very long-term building prospect. And the people involved in that have to think in the long term, not just in terms of a weekend at a weekend outing or taking a young man to a restaurant out to eat. We have a call. This is David Tulis, and caller, you're live on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and on the phone with us we have Council Member Yusuf Hakeem. What's your question?
I know you Southerners do things in a very kind, gentle way, and we Northerners don't. We're very forward, and we say what we think in an abrupt manner at times. And I want to say it, that I'm sick and tired of the police department coddling to the black community while these thugs get away with killing people. That helps no one. The difference between liberals, Democrats, and conservatives are conservatives want everyone to succeed, and liberals have killed the black community with their great society and coddling thugs, because blacks are victims of black violence. We need a police department that's going to stop and frisk and bust their heads and throw them in jail and let them repent from jail. But the idea that a man and a woman are killed and the child's homeless or without a mom and dad and bullet holes ridden in a van, and Chattanooga being one of the most violent cities in the country, there's no excuse for it. You know what? The chief should be fired. The mayor should be fired. We need Mayor Rizzo from Philadelphia from the 70s here to clean this mess up.
This is David Tulis, Councilman Yusuf Hakeem. What do you say to that very, very wild and violent diatribe?
Well, I think we have to take into consideration all the viewpoints that citizens may put forth before us. Now, as I've stated, the events of this past week, I mean, they're just tragic, disappointing. And to me, the event on Brainerd Road, I mean, that said to me that the gangs feel like the streets belong to them. Now, I am a Democrat, but my response to these actions over the past week and prior to is that the police department need to be more aggressive in their policing. Now, I'm not saying, just for the sake of it, go hit somebody across the head. But right now, I do not believe that the persons perpetrating this violence believes that the citizens are sick and tired of it, that the police will enforce the law. I just don't see it right now. But at the same time that we make sure we get them off the street or whatever needs to be done with them, we need to put forth a plan that says we're going to offer you education, a job at the end of the process, and so forth. Now, the VRI, to my view, is too narrow in its focus. It's just dealing with, the tip of the iceberg. And I'm saying if we're going to change this dynamic, we're going to have to get to the people who are unemployed or underemployed, and those who really want to work and afford them an opportunity to be successful in this society.
Well, are you proposing any different, Yusuf Hakeem, from what has been proposed for the past 50 years under Democratic and Republican forms of socialism? One more program. It seems to me that these young men don't want to be part of another program. It seems to me that they have a very high disregard for anything that's touched by government actors, by officials, by welfare workers, by police officers. I think they're rightly skeptical of having any involvement, being enwrapped and embraced by anything that is a state program. Is that really the answer? One more state program to give them a government job? Is that the solution?
Now, I don't mean a government job. If we look around here in the city of Chattanooga, it is believed that within, I believe it's the next 5 years, we're going to have about 15,000 jobs that are needed. If these young people we're talking about are not eligible for those kinds of jobs, where a lot of people are going to move from the jobs they have to these other jobs. So that means there's still going to be some vacancies. And my view is that, we can't or never should give up, because the result would be, we can't do nothing and believe that things are going to change. My children can probably tell you, I believe in punishment and reward. And, I don't want to make it all fancy and all of this. It's just two things. If you break the law, you pay the price. If you want to change, the opportunity is there. But again, I think it's on too small a scale what is being proposed by the VRI. Well,
the VRI is a state-sponsored solution to the lawless use of violence. My listener is a man who believes in violence too. He carries a 44 caliber revolver under his pocket. He's a licensed carrier of a weapon, and he carries it for not just personal safety, but he carries it because he wants to protect innocent women and children. So violence is something that we all, as men, have an interest in. We have an interest in the right use of violence. Well, Yusuf Hakeem, city council member, is there a private non-governmental solution? There has been one proposed in the Sunday editions of the newspaper. There was a lengthy story by Joan Garrett McLean, an interview about a very wealthy Chattanooga businessman, Mr. McKenzie. I think his name is Thorpe McKenzie. And he proposes a school for poor boys, a charter school for poor males only, boys, young men in Chattanooga that would aim at bringing free market solutions and educational services and other things to the kind of young men that ends up being a gang member. What do you make of this prospect?
I'm very encouraged by it. You have a person who doesn't have to do this, but he wants to do this. And I think that, there's no one thing that's going to be the magic bullet that changes it all. But this is one thing that we need, I guess you could say, in our quiver that will move things forward. The children would get the attention they need, and I think society would be better for it.
So that proposed charter school by Mr. McKenzie downtown would not have state actors. It wouldn't have it's not just another government program, but it's a place where you can have, even as a gang member, you can come here and take a class that brings out your genius. Let me ask you, you were saying, elaborate if you would, Yusuf Hakeem, on the idea that you mentioned a moment ago, that many of these young men who are gang members have many strengths of character. What kind of strengths would these be? What knowledge, what gifts do you think that they have that could be drawn to a more peaceful, more profitable purpose?
Well, they are natural leaders, those persons who are leading these groups. In addition to that, they've learned, I guess you could say, how to survive. And some of them,
they're crafty.
Oh, yes. And some of them, they don't have to put things on paper. They can deal with it all in their minds. So I'm saying there's a lot of inner abilities that they have that we're not utilizing or taking advantage of as a community, as a nation. And I'm saying there's more good there than negative. We just have to be willing to invest in bringing it out of them.
I think probably one problem that a young man has who's a gang member is that he doesn't really think about other people. He tends to be self-centered. he doesn't. Christianity would require him, if he heard the gospel and believed it, he would be required to start thinking not about his own pleasures, his the lay he's going to get Friday night with a girl, but he's going to have to start thinking about other people. He becomes more other centric. He takes a longer term perspective, which if he took, he would realize, man, I can make a good living helping other people in a particular business, and that's something I think that can't really be taught in the public sector, especially by a cop. A cop cannot teach anybody, I don't think, that kind of thinking. What are some of the gifts of these young men?
Well, I think that our community, dealing with these group of young people, they have to see other people doing the right thing. I'll put it that way, and be around that. They can be successful. We know that. I know some young men who've come out of that environment to be successful, to be involved in the church. And, if they can see, and I believe they can, that it's not all about them, but being a servant to others, I feel that, yes, they can change.
A gang member, Yusuf Hakeem, city council member, can be redeemed from his low and dirty, difficult, dangerous path. In
my view, yes. I mean, a lot of us have come a long way from where we were. Because of our salvation, our belief in Jesus Christ. And I feel fortunate and blessed. I look back on it sometime and I say, how did I get from point A to point B? And knowing, like I said, where I've come from.
Yeah, you were given God's grace, Yusuf Hakeem. And so what we have to encourage these young people to think is that there's grace from God to them. And that if they are given grace, they're given time, they're given breath, they're given the pleasures of life, they're given the enjoyment of rest, of drinking a cool drink, of eating a great hamburger, say from Wimpy's. They can enjoy these things. They can then say, well, let me give grace to other people, not threats and bellicose actions.
Yeah. And I concur completely with that statement. Again, I think what they see and what they're involved in, just the simple thing of saying please and thank you makes a big difference. But do they see us, adults, doing just that, those so-called small things?
Yusuf Hakeem, thank you for joining my listener and me here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
This is David Tulis. We were talking with City Council member Yusuf Hakeem, who has some questions and doubts about the VRI, the Violence Reduction Program of the Police Department in Chattanooga, and who is looking into character issues and how can we build and encourage righteous, honorable character among members of gangs here in Chattanooga. This is David Tulis, AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. In the middle of our street.
Hi, I'm Sabrina with Sabrina Realty Associates. Now is a great time to sell